Dr. Ampel, thank you again for being our host and sponsoring such a great workshop. We've developed such a wonderful relationship with Dr. Ampel and University of Central Florida and the Learning Liaisons. You know, I've spent 23 years, and again, I think we have all educators, and I believe there's one business owner. Is that right? Are all of you teachers at various levels? May I ask at what level, elementary, middle, or high school, please? Middle school computer design. Chris, how are you? First grade, Susan. Okay, Peggy, retired elementary school principal. Wonderful. Special ed. And Michael, K-12. 678, Barbara. Wonderful. Okay, so I started out, just to give you a little background, I started out as a social science teacher in one of probably the most famous school districts in New Jersey, Paterson, New Jersey, East Side High. They made a movie with Morgan Freeman called Lean on Me. Joe Clark had just left 2 years after I started my first year as a 22-year-old social studies teacher, and I was stabbed in the right abdominal area and learned very quickly not to be discouraged by urban education, but basically to come back and empower our youth because of the troubles and perils that they face in many of our urban sectors across the nation. And from there, I went on to become a school vice principal at the middle and high school level, athletic director, as well as an elementary school principal, K-8. I went on to the higher education, where I was a professor in the Department of Education and Counseling at both Westchester University, which is one of our what they call POSHI state system schools in Pennsylvania, and then at the University of Delaware, which one of our noted quarterbacks for the Ravens was one of my students at the time. He was a senior. His name is Joe Flacco, who's now a Super Bowl MVP champion for the Ravens. And then from there, we started Teach Anti-Bullying, Inc., and we're growing, but in the nonprofit world, which is a first for me, obviously generating revenue through donations, grants, and fundraising can become quite tedious. However, I believe that this particular issue that has become near and dear to me, going way back to my doctoral research on school violence prevention in '99, has certainly come around full circle, because we have had in the past year alone 72 school shootings directly relating to bullying, as you see every day in the news. So I wanted to briefly give you an overview about me, and the rest of it is on the bio page of our website. But this particular link or video we shared with you, I start you off with that as a case study discussion. The little boy in the video segment died 2 years ago. He died in March, on the 4th of March. He was a sixth grader. He was an honor student, gifted and talented young man, played baseball, was very involved in his community, was a model student, never missed a day of school due to illness, and loved baseball and was a Cub Scout. So on the surface, this young boy did everything correctly. In fact, his mother, Gina Rizaldi, who was a pacifist, always taught Bailey to walk away from altercations. The father, on the other hand, felt very strongly that Bailey was a victim of bullying. And as a result, Bailey was being victimized every day. But like many students, Bailey never reported it to his teacher and or administrators, which is a big part of the problem when we talk about reporting bullying incidences and documenting such incidences. And so why this becomes such a controversial case is that when Bailey went into induced coma after having seizures, he was punched in the face during a schoolyard altercation, and then the nurse applied some ice about 1:30 in the afternoon. He went home, and about 3 days later, he started to have seizures. He was rushed to one of our best hospitals, if not the best hospital in the country, in Philadelphia, Children's Hospital, and a day after then was in a three-week coma. After 3 weeks, parents had to take him off life support, and Bailey died one day after his 12th birthday. And Bailey's school district is located about 7 miles north of where I live, outside of Philadelphia. So it became very near and dear to us because we became big supporters of this family. We started a scholarship in this boy's name. And when we started to receive phone calls from parents and the children saying that Bailey was in fact a victim and he never opened up, and who all of these kids were that were tormenting him, it became very clear to us that the children really didn't want to talk to law enforcement. And when they kind of were looking at whether this was bullying or not, they determined that it wasn't bullying based on the autopsy report that came back 8 weeks later, determining that they did not have a real cause of death. It was unknown how Bailey died. Now, I'm a parent. For those of you who are parents, you have to ask yourself, how does a child without any ever had a history of illnesses, a model young man, how does you send him to school, he gets punched in the face in his frontal lobe, his nose is shattered, and he falls to the ground on the schoolyard, and he loses his life after being victimized since October of the preceding year. So how do you live with that? Ever since then, the parents have hired an independent medical examiner to relook at this case. But unfortunately, the boys, the perpetrator, there were 3 of them, 2 were charged with a simple assault, were fined only $500, and had to do 200 hours of community service, as opposed to what the parents wanted, which was involuntary manslaughter. All boys, 2 12-year-olds and 1 13-year-old in a K-8 school district. So the question becomes, law enforcement comes in, the principal says it wasn't bullying, they interviewed all the teachers and the teachers' aides, and kids were afraid to talk to police. So across the country, every day, over 13 million kids coming back to school now become victimized to this pervasive or ever-growing pervasive problem that has shown no decline, mind you, since 1999, and since 2006, as I'm going to share with you the most current data that we received as of July 6th this year, has resulted in no decline in bullying-related issues or incidences in this country, those of which are reported. One teacher indicated early on, and we can discuss it, that they're not to put bullying on a referral, and I'm not sure, what that procedure policy is about, but certainly we can talk about that. It's become a problem. In New Jersey, Governor Christie probably has the most extensive HIB policy, harassment, intimidation, and bullying legislation in the country. It really is a model. Last year alone, they reported 12,771 bullying issues alone. Now, to start off our program, when we say bullying, everybody now thinks everything is bullying. And for those of you who are currently teachers and or retired school administrators, your phones probably ring off the hook, and you say, oh, my son was bullied, my daughter was bullied. Kids are touching each other, they're hitting each other, they're not keeping their hands to themselves. Everybody's being bullied. Certainly we know that that's not the case, because bullying has, just like any other psychological or cognitive illness, has a criteria. It's very clear, it is defined, and I'm going to take you through definition and the criteria, and then take you through all of the other issues revolving around the basics of bullying. We will get into, as Daniela spoke about, how the other side, when we look at the more severe portion of children who are victimized, and that is the children on the hidden disability spectrum. So the first question I have before we even get into this is, what is bullying? If we start a classroom lesson, whether, again, we don't do the same for K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, very different than middle and high school. But for educators and business owners and other professionals with us, how do you define bullying? What is it? Because I was a clear victim of it, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, but just throw out some operative words or definitions. Let's just open it up for discussion, and let's start with the definition of it. What do you think it is? Okay, sure. Harassment. Barbara says harassment. That is a word that we're going to take a look at. Shannon, intimidation. Chris says ongoing harassment that contributes to depression, put downs, unwarranted, merciless teasing. Okay. Michael, bullying is defined differently in 49 out of 50 states. And Michael, you're absolutely correct. And we do not have a universal definition to bullying, which unfortunately, this is what's going on here, loading folders.
No idea. I still see you. Keep going. I still see you.
Okay, but
Keep talking. You need to work off of this.
so there is no universal definition. I want them to see me though.
They do see you.
Oh, okay. So there is no universal definition of bullying at all. And it's unfortunate that every state has different policies on bullying. And if there was such a universal one, we probably would be better off. So all of you have given me, you know, if we were looking at a diagram on a whiteboard or smartboard, these are all operative words that define bullying. Now, let's take a look at these slides. The first person I want you to take a look at, this is David Redpath. You see anything not normal about this young man? He's an 11-year-old boy. He's holding a book that I wrote after interviewing David called My Name is David. I Have Autism and I Was Bullied. This was the book that Ellen featured among 7 other authors during Autism Awareness Month this April. Anything you notice different about David? Anything that stands out to you, perhaps, about this 11-year-old boy? He seems really nice. He is, in fact, very nice. Great smile. He has braces now. Anyone else? Barbara? Handsome kid. Okay, he thinks so. And Mom certainly thinks so as well. Well, David has a hidden disability. And, you know, again, I just want to briefly mention it because we're not going to get into it tonight. It's a whole nother segment, 90-minute segment. But David has Asperger's, ASD, on the autism spectrum. And we look at David, and what you don't know by looking at a mere photograph of David is that he has been a victim of ongoing and incessant bullying since the kindergarten. David has been in 2 different districts. Both districts rank in the top 10 in the state of Pennsylvania. In fact, right now, David is in probably the second best school district in the state of Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia. So he gets all the services that can be provided to a child with an IEP that's 22 pages in length. But David, again, beginning his middle level year in 6th grade, was tormented at the bus stop, abused at the bus stop, thrown waffles at his face, kicked, pushed, and shoved, and essentially Mom, who tried to hide in the bushes, and I told her, you're not going to hide in the bushes and try to protect your child. It doesn't work that way. So I just merely introduced David as a person like many other children who look very, very clean, very, nice, great smiles on the surface, but have a lot of challenges on the inside. And certainly a child who is victimized on the autism spectrum raises that level of anxiety and or depression, and a lot of other clinical and cognitive issues result as a result of being a victim. All right, next slide. So we define and we look at what is real bullying. What does it look like? Look at all these children here. In the center, you have Israel Price, Shannon Cragen, Justin Rhodes with the red hair, Israel Thomas, and hanging upside by his hoodie there on a fence outside of his high school is Najan Corey. Anything stand out to you about these children? Take a look at these children. It varies in ages from 10 to 18, 13, 17, 16. Anything stand out to you about these 5 children?